Hey everybody, welcome to News Now Wyoming. Today we're going to be taking a look at a recently decided February 5th, 2020 case by the Wyoming Supreme Court. I'm not even going to give you an introduction to this case. It will quickly speak for itself. So let's go ahead and get started here. Enjoining the unauthorized practice of law. This matter came before the court, finding of fact. Boring. Order that on or before June 1st, 2020, respondent Clyde W. Stock shall remit to fine of $4,000. You know what? They're going to repeat all that. Oh, no, they won't. This is the actual order. So, pay the fine of $4,000. That respondent Stock shall make restitution of $4,500 to Dan Carey. And then Mr. Stock shall reimburse the committee for costs of this proceeding in the amount of $5,877.67 by paying that amount to the Wyoming State Bar. Whew. So he's got to pay and then 13,000, about 14,000 plus or minus, right? A couple $100 there. Well, what's this about? So in the matter of Clyde W. Stock, unauthorized practice of law. Boring case, boring, unauthorized practice of law. Why do we even have to discuss this? This is good. This matter came before the Committee on the Unauthorized Practice of Law for hearing Bar Counsel's petition for civil injunction and other relief. The duly noticed hearing was held the third day of December, blah, blah. Quorum of the committee comprised of them, blah, blah. Who cares who they are? Respondent did not appear. As a result, the hearing proceeded as a default hearing. So you screw yourself over, dude. Okay, the committee, having heard the testimony of witnesses, having received certain exhibits into evidence, having reviewed the pleadings on file in this manner, and being fully informed on the premises findings, concludes and recommends as follows. Findings of fact. In late February 2018, Thane attorney Kevin Voiles notified the Wyoming Office of Bar Counsel and others of allegations that Freedom resident Clyde Wallace Stock had engaged in the unauthorized practice of law, Exhibit BC1. Stock's filing in this matter indicate that he considers himself a sovereign citizen, now you know why we're here today, who frequently files declarations to that effect with the Lincoln County clerk. Unfortunately, you guys, I cannot go to this clerk and ask. I'm going to send an email and try to find some cases that he might have started on his own. But since this is pretty far from me, I'm not sure how far I can actually get. According to Voiles' letter, the victims of Stock's UPL were Voiles' longtime clients, Mr. and Mrs. Castle, residents of Freedom, Wyoming. According to Voiles' letter, Mr. Castle is terminally ill with cancer, and Mrs. Castle is incapacitated with dementia. He died May 6, 2018 at age 87. R.I.P., man. Biographical information about Mr. Castle is readily available online and identifies him as a Salt Lake City-born gunsmith and Wildcat cartridge developer whose experiments with Colt 45 ammunition in the 1950s led to the creation of the 454 Castle cartridge. Now, I'm a gun guy, and I know nothing about this cartridge. But you make a new bullet, you're pretty good in my book. Alright. Castle's passion was 6-shooters, and he was determined to create a high-velocity round for the Colt 45 Colt. In 1978, Castle and a partner created Freedom Arms in Freedom, Wyoming. His online obituary indicates that Castle died in Freedom, Wyoming, and is buried in Freedom Cemetery in Freedom, Idaho. Oh, this must be a borderline town. The obituary reports Dick held 17 major firearm patents and was voted Outstanding American Handgunner in 1987, along with many other awards over the years. According to her online obituary, Mrs. Castle died February 9th, 2019. Oh, 6, 7, 8 months later. Oh, that's rough, but wonder how long they were married. Freedom is an unincorporated community located in northwestern Lincoln County, Wyoming, and straddles the Wyoming-Idaho line. Yep, okay. The 2010 census lists the population of Freedom, Wyoming at 214. According to Voiles' letter to Bar Council, Dick and Jerry Castle Living Trust was created in 2007, was prepared by blah blah blah, boring. So this law firm was hired twice to do this trust. Okay, got the facts. Okay, so here's where we become fun. With respect to Stock's involvement with the trust, Voiles' letter provided the following narrative. In October 2017, Mr. Stock convinced Mr. Castle to execute what is titled the D&G Bullet Trust, a business trust, supposedly an irrevocable complex trust. He told Mr. Castle the trust would protect his business assets but would not include his personal property. Mr. Stock made himself one of the trustees in the trust document. Mr. Stock had Mr. and Mrs. Castle sign a quitclaim deed that put their real property, which includes their personal residence, into the trust. Yes, this sounds legit, right? That action, which showed his complete misrepresentation to Mr. and Mrs. Castle of what was being accomplished through the documents he was asking them to sign. Furthermore, it is my opinion that due to her mental infirmity, Mrs. Castle clearly lacked capacity to sign a deed. Finally, Mr. Stock had Mr. Castle execute a new power of attorney that designated him as Mr. Castle's attorney in fact. Attorney in fact. Okay? He also had Mrs. Castle sign a new power of attorney that made Mr. Castle her attorney in fact. It is my opinion that Mrs. Castle lacked capacity to sign such a document. As the grand finale of Mr. Stock's estate planning efforts for Mr. and Mrs. Castle, Mr. Stock advised them not to let the lawyers know what they had executed. Okay, you guys. If somebody ever does something and says, don't let your lawyers know, that might be a clue to talk to somebody else and get another opinion. Because the lawyers would not understand and would only mess things up. He's right. They would only mess things up. His scam would have been shown for the scam it was before. Oh, yeah, no. So, please, tell your parents, tell your grandparents, anybody in their 80s. Be in their business. Find out who might be doing this. This is bad. I really feel sorry for this family. Because they have to go through all this crap for nothing. It is my belief and opinion that Mr. Castle did not read and did not understand the trust proffered by Mr. Stock. It is my opinion that he had no idea that the title to his property is no longer in his name. It is that of his wife as trustees of their 2007 trust. It is his opinion that Mrs. Castle had no understanding of anything that has transpired as a result of Mr. Stock's actions. He continued, likely legal action will be necessary. He needs to be stopped from preying on elderly people in such fashion. We'll see what's in this here in a minute. Mr. Voiles sent an email to the Office of Bar Counsel. Boring. Was an affidavit from Stock, who testified that he prepared 2 powers of attorneys at Dick Castle's request. Oh, yep. Mr. Castle seemed like he was the type of person to ask for this on his own. and that he reviewed the 2000 trust, also at Castle's request. I did read the agreement and told him I did not know if that living trust would protect his assets or not. I then told him that Rhea Stock and I had a trust that protected us several times from lawsuits, and that could have lost everything we had if it had not been the trust that was in place. He then asked me if I could help him get a trust like what Rhea and I used that would protect his and Jerry's property. Yeah, that sounds legit. The Office of Bar Counsel received a formal blah blah. Report named Mr. Stock and Ochi as respondents and provided the following narrative. Mr. Stock and Mr. Ochi provided advice, expressed legal opinions, and drafted legal documents for Mr. Castle and Mrs. Geraldine B. Castle without having been admitted to practice law in Wyoming. Mr. Castle is dying of cancer and does not have the capacity. This is April 24, 2018. So 1 month before he passed. Does not have the capacity or will to manage his property and personal effects. Likewise, Mrs. Castle suffers from severe dementia and lacks capacity to make decisions for herself. It appears that Mrs. Mr. Stockanochi preyed on the sick and elderly couple in order to undo their long-standing trust agreement and take their property and assets for their own. Along with copies. So none of these exhibits are actually attached. We'll talk about that at the end. Mr. Stock's response, dated May 18, 2018, was received on May 29, 2018. So he passed away when? May 6th. So 3 weeks after the man died. Thank you for giving me the option of answering this complaint myself and not having to use an attorney. I am in my 84th year and the caretaker of my invalid wife of 65 years. I have limited income, so I appreciate your consideration. I have never intended to practice law. I do not know how to practice law. If what I did appeared to be the practice of law, I apologize. At Mr. Castle's request, I did adapt our estate plan over to Dick and Jerry so they would have some asset protection. I duplicated Dick's original trust just as he requested. My intent was only to help an old friend of mine for over 50 years and not to practice law. As for the egregious claims made by Mr. Carey, the grandson, or the son, and Kevin Voiles, I would be happy to answer the charges point by point at any time you want to see my response. I know you are busy, so I will not take your time to answer their egregious claims at this time. There may be a law firm in Salt Lake City ready to counterclaim any lawsuit filed trying to extort money from me to pay Dan Carey's legal fees. They feel Dan is guilty of harassment and extortion. Yes, within 2 weeks of his dad dying, he was guilty of harassment and extortion. I'm including the 9-minute orders of the D&G Bulletproof, just in case you are interested and have not seen them all. My affidavit signed 8 March 2018. I hope this will explain the situation to your satisfaction. If you need more information, I will be very happy to answer any questions or supply more information. Attached to Stock's response were a copy of the affidavit, blah blah. Directive signed by Mr. Castle regarding his intentions for management of the trust. The minutes included a copy of a quitclaim deed recorded with the Lincoln County Clerk. Filing of this document presumably created a title problem that Voiles resolved in 2018 by obtaining a commitment from a title insurance company for the Castle's property that had been put in the D&G Bullet Trust. Stock sent a letter to Bar Counsel in which he attached a list of cases pulled from the internet, which he said shows he does not need a license to practice law in any event. Whew. Yeah, so this is more of that sovereign citizens crap, right? So more out-of-pocket expenses, blah blah. Who cares what they wrote? They're not funny. The rules also provide may be required to pay a fine that may range from $100 to $250 per incident. Whew. Okay, so basically a settlement agreement. Nope, done. So $4,764 is what they said he would have to pay in total if he just said, "I'll drop this right now." Oh, no. He did not respond to the proposal. Instead, he sent an express notice of waiver of tort, which contained an apparent offer to settle his claims against Bar Council and others in exchange for a payment of $620,000. So he's now suing, demanding the Bar Council and others to pay $620,000. Whew! Isn't that not great? A month later, Stock sent a notice of default, which apparently reiterated his settlement demand. Alright, you guys. Now I think is the time to start talking about these exhibits. This case just happened. I've already put in a request with the Supreme Court Clerk of Court, asking her to let me know how much it would cost for copies of all these exhibits provided by Mr. Stock himself. At this time, I have not received a reply, but I promise to make a follow-up video as soon as I do. Alright, let's continue here. Bar Council filed a petition for an injunction, and then respondent's answer to the petition filed June 20th, 2019 begins with the following. Respondent is not now nor has ever been a resident of Freedom, Wyoming. Resident disavows past or present any residency in any District of Columbia territorial construct called a county. Respondent believes that no evidence exists that respondent has ever been a resident of any county in Wyoming or in any other state. Therefore, the court has no person's jurisdiction. The bar and their rules and power over the respondents does not exist. Respondents has no evidence of this court's jurisdiction and believes none exists. Whew. Respondent did take place in this. The scheduling conference deadlines were established for discovery. Yeah, boring. He sent another email. Man, this guy just needs to learn when to shut up. Oh, they passed. He was ill and unable to attend the September 20th. Although you do not provide the medical documentation requested, your request for continuation of the hearing schedule for September 20th is granted. However, because of the time and expense involved in rescheduling, there will only be one continuance granted. A default will be entered against you if you are unable to attend the next hearing date that is scheduled. Ms. Hauscher will be rescheduling the date for the hearing and will be in contact with you. On September 30th, Mr. Stock filed motion for dismissal of case due to lack of personal jurisdiction, again requested, in which he argued, amongst other things, that any requirement that persons providing legal services has to be licensed to practice law is contrary to law. In the same filing, Stock admitted to preparing the D&G Bullet Trust as well as the general powers of attorney for Mr. and Mrs. Castle. On September 30th, Bar Council filed a response in which he pointed out that Stock himself is a licensed professional holding a dental license issued by the Wyoming Board of Dental Examiners. Okay, so he was actually a dentist. So he has applied for licenses in the past. You know what? Give me 1 second here. Okay, never mind. That's not going to work for me. So at my follow-up, I'm also going to look up, see anything I can about his dental license, alright? October 16th, 2019, blah, blah, boring. He's filed a reply to counsel's objection to Stock's motion for dismissal. In it, he announced that he had requested that his dental license be canceled. Okay, because he asked for it to be canceled means he is no longer a resident. Maybe he once was a resident. Wait, what did he say up here? Is not now nor has ever been a resident and disavows past or present any residency in any District of Columbia. So, you can just give up your citizenship like that. Just so you know, you are no longer a person if you just say, hey, you know what, I'm not a person anymore. Blah, blah. Entered denying Stock's motion for dismissal. An individual apparently acting on Stock's behalf sent Chair Stickley, Bar Counsel, an email to which was attached a document entitled Witness Testimony in the form of an affidavit signed by Stock. Included with the 13-page affidavit was the following statement signed by Stock. This is to notify you that I will not be attending the meeting on the 3rd of December. I have been very sick. I am with my daughter in Salt Lake so that she can take care of me and my wife. I am unable to get meals or take care of my wife without help. He was able to prepare a 13-page affidavit and submit it 2 days before the hearing. So despite his illness, he was able to do this. It proceeded as a default. They still put in all the evidence. All the evidence of the things he did. It is undisputed that Stock prepared all 4 documents. So four documents, 4 times being acting as an attorney when you are not one. Testify that he had represented blah blah. Boring. He first became aware of Stock's unauthorized practice of law when Mr. and Mrs. Castle's nephew, not son, I'm sorry, a principal beneficiary to their estate, Dan Carey, brought copies of the Bullet Trust and related documents to his office. He started trying to undo all the damage. Wait, hold on. I do want to said about implementing remedial measures to mitigate the damages done by Stock's conduct, including meeting with Carey and Stock, urging Stock to rescind his actions with respect to the D&G Bullet Trust. He never intended to harm the Castles, but was only trying to help his friends. He was not persuaded by their innocence. Obtained Castle's estate, including a large gun collection, as well as Mr. Castle's drawings and other proprietary materials related to his numerous arms-related inventions. Voyle, who has experience with trust, blah, blah, anything of interest here. No. So you guys can pause this, but I have no interest in reading that aloud. The trust contemplated appointment of general manager who would be authorized to issue 99 certificates of capital units representing 99% of the beneficial interest in the trust estate. He may make loans whether secured or unsecured, or whether with or without interest to any person. So this manager, okay, I want you to understand what this actually is doing here. This manager is able to loan out money from this trust without any requirement of repayment, no securities, with no interest, or with interest if he wants. So his wife needs a loan. Okay, yeah, here you go. Here's a loan. Tell me, guys, does this really seem like something you would trust? That this doesn't scream scam to you? Trustees would be entitled to reimburse all expenses. Okay, that's fair. Among the expenses to be paid by the trust were the cost of all emergency, medical, dental care, and health, life, and retirement insurance for the trust officers to continue. So the trust is going to pay his medical expenses for the rest of his life. You guys understand what that is actually doing? Oh, at no cost to him. Yes, this is completely legitimate. This is right. This just seems right, doesn't it? Provided that the trustees would have absolute and uncontrolled discretion and power, would not be liable for any loss or damage incurred as a result of the exercise of such discretion or power. Uh, they shall not be required to obtain authority or approval of any court in the exercise of any powers conferred hereunder, and shall not be required to make current reports or accounting thereto. Okay, so not only are they able to issue a loan to whoever the hell they want, for however much they want, whether or not that person secures it, but they should not have to make any reports or accounting to anybody. And he claims above he felt that this was in his friend's best interest. You guys, with friends like this, you do not need enemies. I promise you that. Actually, you know what? If you guys will sign something like this, if you type it up, I will serve as your trustee manager. I won't type it for you. I won't get it ready for you. I won't do any of that stuff because I'm not an attorney. But if you were to type this up and ask me to serve as trustee, I will serve as trustee on this, okay? Or, sorry, as general manager and as a trustee. Okay? I will. Any one of you. No. I just can't believe somebody, not that the old man would sign this, okay? I understand he was sick, he was dying. He probably didn't even read the damn thing. I just can't believe somebody else would try to claim that he did this because he felt it was the right thing to do. Boring. Again, you guys can find this on the Wyoming Supreme Court website. He testified about his relationship with his uncle, Dick Castle, and described Castle as the kindest person he has ever known. He attributes his career as a Navy and commercial airline pilot to a plane ride Carrie took with his uncle when Carrie was 17 years old. They never had children of their own, and he considered Castle to be a father figure. He and his wife took care of the Castles in their final illnesses, moving them into their home during the final months of his life. Okay? Blah, blah, boring. So, based on all the foregoing, they think he engaged in at least 4 incidents of the unauthorized practice of law. Committee further, and so, let's see here, should be required to pay an amount of $1,000 for each incident. So again, there were 4 for a total fine of $4,000, and that he should be required to reimburse the Wyoming State Bar for costs associated with this investigation and hearing. Okay, so I want you guys to look back at this again. They offered to settle this for, what was that, $4,500? You pay us back you pay $4,500. We'll call this good. Instead, he now owes what did we say, 13 and change, or 13.5 or whatever. Whew. Okay, so Wyoming State statute. See here, blah blah, boring. Notice of findings, conclusions, determinations by the Supreme Court. So that's what he did, is he turned back over to the Supreme Court, and then they filed this. Again, wow. So this was the State Bar's response motion to the Supreme Court. But how awesome is that? So I've got a lot of homework to do. I've got paperwork I've got to get a hold of. I work right down the street from the Supreme Court, so I know it won't be a problem with me getting my hands on these documents. And then doing more research on the actual law. I'm just curious here. Because if that is all it says, that's pretty vague. So, he was still wrong. He's still a scammer. And I'm surprised they're not trying to charge him with an actual crime yet. I mean, nothing about that seems legit. Well, what do you guys think? What are you able to find out? Post below. Let me know. Again, this is Sovereign Citizen, unauthorized practice of law, state Wyoming State Bar. All right, you guys have a good one.